welcome everybody to this Saturday's episode of Dive into Young Politics with Leah and Zahara. Thank you again for joining us. There will be opportunities for you to call in and join the discussion later today, but we're excited to have you guys back for our second show.
Yeah, hello everybody. We're excited to have you. My name is Zahara.
And then our guest today is going to be Mikal Goodman. So Mikal Goodman is a candidate for Pontiac City Council District 3. He's also the vice chair of the Young Democrats of Michigan. He's also part of the Oakland County Democratic Party, and he's really running in Pontiac right now to progress Pontiac forward, to fight for the families, the community, and the businesses there. So we're very excited to have him on with us today. Mikal, if you want to go ahead and take a moment to introduce yourself to people.
So hi, my name is Mikal Goodman. I am a lifelong resident of Pontiac. I'm 21 years old. I've been doing a lot of, grassroots, people-based politics since I was in high school, probably about sophomore year. And now is, I think, the moment that I'm running for office, because I've kind of finally figured out that it's time to really put what I've learned into good practice.
Fantastic. So that kind of leads us into our first question for you.
Yes. So how did you get started or involved in politics?
So like most young people in the past couple of years, it was due to Bernie Sanders. Let me not pretend that it's not. I was taking a political science class back in high school, and it was during the same time that the Democratic primaries were happening. So my teacher made us watch them as we were, reading through a book and so on and so forth. And a lot of what was happening really spoke to me. And it was like, well, if I want these things to get accomplished, I have to get involved. I have to, help progress this forward. So I started off there. I wasn't super involved in politics, really. I was mainly only involved with, the Bernie side of the presidential campaign. And it took me until about 2018 to get involved with a couple other campaigns. I moved away to California for a little brief bit, did some organizing out there. And then when I moved back in 2018, and in 2019, I joined the MDP and got involved that way. And lo and behold, I ended up getting involved with the Young Democrats of Michigan, a couple of different organizations, and gained a lot of experience, gained a lot of allies. People gained some respect for me to keep putting me in positions to help do things because they, hopefully agree with the things I was trying to do. And that kind of led us to where we are today, which is me fighting for the people, because that's how I got involved in the first place.
That's fantastic. So what type of organizing work have you done, Mikal, in all that experience? Are you field, door knocker? What exactly is your stick?
I would say that I'm good at a lot of it, doing some field work, doing door knocking. It's fun to me. I love talking to people. However, I would say that I'm a little bit better with the back end of things. So like comms and PR is like my specialty. Being able to talk to people, being able to convey and teach issues is kind of really my strong suit. But like I'm no slouch when it comes to the other aspects of organizing either. It's just I'm really good at communications. It's one of the things I take like very much pride in.
Definitely. We all know how much we need comms directors.
Yes, exactly. Big difference.
For sure. Go for it.
So, you talked about like running in Pontiac. So what are the top 3 issues for Pontiac right now?
Well, for me, I want to change the narrative a little bit, because oftentimes in Pontiac, we discuss, we need more jobs. We need more home ownership. We need, our roads fixed, which are all important issues that have to be tackled. But we have to look at what's affecting the majority of people here. So for me, one of my biggest concerns is addressing the city's affordable housing problem. We have a lot of apartment-based housing, a lot of houses, and so on and so forth. And they are marketed pretty cheap in the grand scheme of things when you compare Pontiac to the surrounding area. If you have a $700 apartment, that's great in Oakland County, because Oakland County's wage is much higher. People make much more money here. But in Pontiac, $700 is not feasible for most people that live here. So making sure that the city has actual affordable housing, that the lower income residents that make up the majority of our city can afford to live here. but also making sure that we hold the people who are running these housing complexes that are, renting out these houses are being held accountable. That way, people are not being taken advantage of in their desperation. So that's the first one for me. Of course, addressing city infrastructure and roads is a very important thing, because let's be real, Pontiac and Flint are not exactly that much different. And there are concerns that we also have some crumbling and dangerous infrastructure in terms of like water lines and pipes. So making sure that we fix those things, make sure that we're fixing our roads. To quote Gretchen here, we do need to fix the damn roads. Unfortunately, for the past 30 years, none of the roads in Pontiac have actually been fixed. They've been patched and, kind of glossed over, but never actually repaired, and it's showing. There's a reason why people keep breaking their rims and losing tires when they're driving through Pontiac, because the roads are horrible. So addressing that, as well as our city infrastructure as a whole, that includes some of our older buildings. And then also, we need to have a solid discussion about jobs, and especially in relation to the job market in Pontiac, and making sure that we have well-paying, prevailing wage jobs for city residents. And also that we don't, assume the synonymousness of bringing in new big businesses and residents getting jobs. Unfortunately, they are not always the same. So we need to make sure that we are not only fighting for jobs in our city, but making sure that the residents of our city can actually hold those jobs, and that they're well-paying jobs that aren't taking advantage of our people. So for me, housing, jobs, and city infrastructure are probably my biggest ones.
Yeah, I'd say that, probably a lot of Michiganders can agree with those being big concerns. I know where I'm from, housing affordability, Ypsilanti is my home base, has been a conversation for several years now, it feels like. So I think there's a lot of things we can unpack in those three issues.
And I mean, like, the roads is a big issue everywhere, but I know it gets even like worse in some areas. And that like plays along with like the insurance rates and all of that and what people can afford. So yeah, our roads is a big issue.
I guess you've probably been asked this question a bunch now, but those are your top three issues. What are you going to do about them?
Well, there's a couple of different things. So let's start in, I guess, reverse order. So like when it comes to jobs, for example, we need to make sure that the city itself is holding businesses and companies accountable when they come into our city. That means making sure that we have some sort of community business agreement where it's like, hey, if we let you, come into our city and have access to these resources, you need to hire so many people. You need to give back and do so many things in the community. But also being more aggressive in other aspects. Unfortunately, we live in this idea of a free market economy, so we have to play by those rules. So we have to look at the history of America and what led to solid and good work conditions and well-paying jobs. And the answer to that is unions. So making sure that labor unions and worker coalitions have much more bargaining power and say-so in the city of Pontiac. That way, we can not only create a stronger base of strong labor people in the city to push wages higher and to hold businesses accountable, but this also creates a community of working class individuals who have this collective agreement and solidarity with one another when it comes to jobs and businesses in our city. So simply doing those things begins to push the quality of work, of wages, of benefits in our city higher once we start actually, breaking out the old playbook and fighting hard for labor, fighting harder for the working class. Infrastructure is just a matter of telling people that cheap solutions don't work. If anyone here knows me personally, concrete and blacktop are one of the most annoying things in the world to me. Because, for example, the city constantly pays over roads with blacktop, which lasts a very short amount of time, but it's really cheap. But for double the cost, you could completely repave all the roads with concrete and they would last dramatically longer. And it's figuring out, yes, it's expensive, but we actually have to take the cost here. Because if we don't, we're going to keep running to the same issues of patching and patching and patching, and it's just draining us money without addressing the actual issue. So doing that, and also making sure that we put money from the city budget to actually fully address these issues and stop doing, the whole, oh, well, let's build this new sign because the sign looks nice and people want to come to Pontiac. Cool, I get that, but I'd rather be more concerned with someone having clean water in their house opposed to having a shiny new sign on Woodward.
Yeah.
And then housing is really just making sure that we have the laws and ordinances in place, the city government infrastructure, and having the staff to hold people accountable, to make sure that these residences have high quality, and also instituting, different plans to increase the amount of affordable housing in the city that is possibly run by the city, properly maintained. That way we're not running into this issue of affordable housing that people still can't afford, but we're creating a system of, high quality affordable housing that doesn't have to be Section 8, that, is actually beneficial for the low income residents of the city. So there's a couple different ways you can handle it. A lot of it's holding people accountable. Most of these things can be accomplished by simply holding people accountable and creating the systems to hold these people accountable.
Yeah, I think you're definitely reworking a lot of a broken structure. Like, you're looking at it from a different perspective and trying to fix a lot of the things that I hear people being so frustrated about on a daily basis.
Yeah, and addressing them and not like what's being addressed right now, and where it's just patchwork and just stuff done temporarily, which makes things worse down the line. I like that you have an actual plan for things.
Yeah, most definitely. I think, you describing the road where they're just patching over it and over and over it is kind of a bigger spectrum of what we see in our politics, is kicking things down the road, or putting a quick fix on it, but not really like gutting it out and dealing with the root issue. And like, that's not done very good for us so far. So like, why do we continue doing that?
Well, because it's typically just cheaper. The unfortunate thing is some people just don't like hard work, or they don't like the money required to do hard work. But the thing is, at this point, we kind of need radical change. And I don't mean radical as in like, oh, well, we have to do something that's never been done before. But using Angela Davis's definition of the word radical, it means to grab things at the root. That's what we need to do with every single issue. We need to grab it at the root. The main part of crime, for example, people have material deficiencies in their life. They don't have food, they don't have money, they don't have the things that are vital to life. You address those, you address crime. Same thing with affordable housing. You address the fact that people cannot afford this affordable housing that you're creating, which leads to other problems in terms of, lack of food, lack of, having utilities on, so on and so forth. If you get to the root of these issues that are affecting people's day-to-day lives, you can actually begin to solve them and actually fix the problem at hand rather than glossing over it or patchworking it.
Yeah, and one of those issues, I mean, that like a lot of people struggle with is that the cost of living has gone up everywhere, but the minimum wage has stayed the same for how long? So that addressing that would be one of the ways we can take care of some of the issues.
Yeah, and then not to mention, in addition to that, also making sure and fighting for wages to go up with the cost of living does make things dramatically easier. It's a great idea to have affordable housing that's tied to city income. So for say Pontiac, with our income being so low, a city-based affordable housing that forces rent to be around 25 to 33% of someone's income would be about $400. Now that's fine and all, but things will continue to get more expensive. And if we don't begin to raise wages to meet that and go beyond it, we're going to keep being in the same cycle that we are currently, just a slightly more manageable one. But a slightly more manageable crisis is not a good thing to be at.
Definitely.
Sure. Yeah, and you guys are live on Dive into Young Politics with Leah and Zahara on WJZZ Cool TV, streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. You can like, follow, share, comment, and subscribe. In addition to sponsor or advertise, you can email WJZZCoolTVofficial@gmail.com.
So just a reminder, guys, every Saturday 1 to 2, we will have different candidates on. But let's dive a little deeper into some of those issues. Where do you feel that this is common for people to be talking about this in Pontiac like you are, or are you kind of the outlier in the city council races right now and the local races? Or do you feel like this is kind of the overall vibe that people are moving towards?
Well, it's a mixture of both. The thing is, Pontiac has an establishment. Well, we have an old guard, and a lot of it is kind of based in, and it's probably gonna get me in trouble, like some sense of complacency, because it's the same thought process that got us millennials and Gen Z into the situation that we are now, where it's, hey, I did everything in the world to get mine. That's it. I have mine. You figure it out on your own. I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to build things up for you. This is for me. Or they try to continue to do things that worked for them, not recognizing that they don't work anymore for everyone else. So when you look at the group of candidates that are running now, a couple of them are running on, big change, like radical change, grasping things at the root of the problem that we see in our city, because we've gone through many elections and half of the candidates are still in their 30s, if not younger. I'm 21. So most of us didn't get to see Pontiac during the period of greatness that it had, or caught the very tail end of it. And we're recognizing that, for us to get to where we need to go, we have to seriously address the issues at hand. And that means really getting to the root of the problem. So it's good to see that in this specific cycle, that more people are pushing for that. But unfortunately, we are still kind of the minority in some sense, especially in terms of those who hold power in the city.
Definitely. So it's kind of cool to hear that you're seeing that shift in that direction, and I think that that's something that we're seeing throughout the state. We're seeing nationally. We're seeing young people kind of starting to step up and say, "Whoa, like this is not good for us. It's not sustainable for us." And something that I think applies a lot to you too in this situation would be, they're no longer sitting down waiting their turn kind of thing. They're stepping up now, wait instead of waiting until they're in their late 30s, until they're in their 40s, until they're necessarily by this traditional term of established. They're saying enough is enough, and they're stepping up and running.
Yeah, I mean, because I've definitely been told to wait my turn by people in the city. Because I don't want to say I've been ambitious, but I've always wanted change, especially since I got involved in politics. So like now, like you're right, I'm tired of waiting my turn, because waiting is what got us to the predicament that we're currently in. And at some point, the people who are dramatically being affected by the situations at hand have to take control of the situation to fix it for ourselves and for the people to come after us. Because if we don't, there will be no people to come after us. And that's a problem. So you're completely right that at a certain point, many young people are saying, I'm tired of waiting. It's either now or never.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely going to help change the way we look at politics and what issues we take up and what we do to address those issues. If you guys would like to join in on the conversation, you can dial 313-355-6018.
Yeah, please give us your questions or comments, or jump in on this discussion. Let us know what you think about what we're talking about. Are these the issues that matter the most to you? Or are we totally off base? Really, that's what this show is about, is finding out what is going on in the youth and how are we getting involved. So I'd like to touch a little more on that question though, Mikal. How do you respond to people when they're still telling you to like wait your turn? Do you just tell them sort of what you said, that no?
Uh, I try to be a little bit more tactful with it, where it's kind of like, I understand how you feel that way, but, we are beyond that point. Waiting our turn has gotten us to where we are today. My kind of thing is, if you feel that we should be waiting our turn still, we'll learn that lesson in November when we lose. When the issues that we're fighting for stop gaining traction, maybe we'll learn then, okay, maybe now is not the right time. But the opposite is happening. We're watching more and more young people get into office. We're seeing these issues get fought for more and more. So it's showing us that waiting our turn is not the pathway that has opened itself. Exactly the opposite. So when people say this, like, oh, you're too young. If not now, then when? Because if we keep this whole waiting your turn thing, I'm going to be waiting my turn until I'm 50. And at that point, someone else much younger than me should be taking it over.
Yeah.
So at some point, the whole concept of waiting your turn has to stop because it doesn't work.
No, and that's how we end up with people that are extremely disconnected, that have been involved in politics for years, and like that's just been their seat. And it's, it's like you want to shake them sometimes and be like, please just come back to the community and realize what's going on.
Yeah, it's like the community is not the same as when you were younger.
Yeah.
To address the issues that a lot of the younger generation is facing, you have to understand them. And that's not to say that there isn't a place for the older candidates.
Right.
There is, a lot of the older candidates who are connected very well with the needs of the younger community and what's going on right now. But in general, being in the younger generation in politics does have its challenges. And I mean, just getting more people motivated, I think, will help with that issue.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think campaigns like McCall's are what usually motivate younger people to get involved because they can see themselves in your candidacy. So how has that been going? Have you gotten a lot of interest in your campaign? Do you have people that are volunteering, people that talk to you about it, or is it still pretty early in the phase for that?
It's a weird mixture of both. With Pontiac not being a super politically involved city, many people just don't know what's happening in the city, other than the fact that the mayor is currently not on the ballot. Other than that, people are kind of unaware. But there are a lot of people who are really excited for my campaign. It's actually kind of at the point where, like, when people hear, like, "Oh, you're Mikhail. I've heard about you." It's getting to that point now, which is starting to feel good because I would like to think that the things that I'm fighting for are kind of inseparable from my name at this point. So when you hear, oh, like Mikhail Goodman, when you see, like, he's a 21-year-old running for city council, my name is attached to the things that I believe in. So I've kind of boxed myself into being the affordable housing candidate because I talk about that so much because of how important it is. So it's at that point where when people hear my name, they're like, oh, I know you. And then also, actually, a couple weeks ago, I was getting coffee, and one of the baristas was like, "Oh, wait, I've seen you on Facebook. You're running for city council, right?" So that feels nice every now and then. So like, it's getting to the point. Because I think also with the fact that I'm running on issues, and I'm running on actual issues. I'm not here to play games and play platitudes. I want actual change. And I feel like that's kind of a rarity at this point, to where people are like, "Oh, that's something that we need. I want to learn more about this." And not to mention, combined with the fact that I'm 21 years old running for city council. So for a lot of people, they hear like the youth part of it and hear how I talk and how I act. They get even more excited. So it's kind of like any interactions that I get just lead to it blossoming and becoming better and more people knowing who I am. So it's been pretty good so far, but it can always get better.
Yeah, name recognition can always go up, right?
Right.
Definitely. That's got to be a cool feeling to be, someone that's been behind the scenes so much and organizing for candidates and helping them to now be on the receiving end of that, like, recognition of a candidate. That's got to be a weird adjustment.
Yeah. So with that, what did you feel was the biggest adjustment or the biggest like takeaway from being behind the scenes to now being the one that is running?
So as you two both know, I have a huge problem with letting things go. I like to do everything that I can. I like to do as much as possible because I feel I'm most useful that way. The hardest part was learning to like let my campaign team actually do their jobs without me interfering. That was one, and also recognizing that the snarkiness in which I normally go through about day to day doesn't work as well for a candidate. Luckily, I learned that early on before I ran, so I kind of didn't have to make that mistake. But like having to kind of hold back in some ways rather than just letting someone have it verbally was a decent adjustment that I had to make. But other than that, I mean, I think the other hardest part was realizing that I'm not behind the scenes anymore and actually having to be, I don't want to say like, that people who are running for office are kind of like actors at a certain point, but they are kind of a performance act at a certain point. You have to act and carry yourself a certain way. And when you're working on the back end, that's not really a big issue because you're typically working with people who agree with you. You're working with people who have practically the same feelings and ideals as you. But when you are the candidate, you have to carry yourself in a different way. And so for some people, it's a really hard adjustment. Some people, it's not.
Yeah, and I think like Leah and I have both faced that in some ways, like being mostly behind the scenes organizing, and I know like even before your campaign, that's something that we saw a lot with like YDM, like being on the board of YDM, and just like right now with the other organizations, like the DNC delegate, it puts you in a different spotlight or in a different, a vision, and you have to like adjust some of the things that you either talk about or the way you talk about them,
Right.
while holding on to your ideals and the things you care about.
Yeah. And I think it's fair for you to say performance again may not be the right word, but like there is that certain like charisma that candidates kind of put on when they go to a thing, and like the certain strategic way that they talk when they're at events. I wish I had a better word than performance, but like
Yeah,
it's just kind of like this certain energy that I think that you see from people that are running for office, and it's kind of just being like on and being off. And that's got to be a different thing to have learned as well, I'm sure.
Well, like luckily for me, for the most part, my campaign personality is kind of identical to my real life personality. Uh, there's just a little bit less profanity. And also, like one of my biggest things I have a problem with that my campaign manager points out, I am very good when talking to constituents, or right now they're not my constituents, but future constituents. If I can talk for a length of time, I can get on a roll. I'm very good when I can talk for extended periods of time because I can have deep, involved conversations. It works very well when you're not in a rush.
Yeah.
Like, talking to multiple people per day, like multiple people in a short span of time, it becomes much harder because you have to get out what you want to convey in a much smaller amount of time. And like for me, it's kind of difficult to be, I don't want to say impersonal, but to be putting my time above other people's. That was probably the hardest adjustment for me, recognizing that, like, people have questions, they want to talk all day long, and I would love to be able to answer all of these right where we are, but it's just not possible.
You'd never get yours.
Yeah, yeah, or if it's phone calls, like you wouldn't get out, like that would end.
Yeah,
exactly. Like, oh, phone call, it's supposed to be 2 minutes. If it's me by myself with no one correcting me, that phone call can go from 2 minutes to 15 minutes if I let it. And that's not a good thing when you have things to accomplish in the day.
So some of the time management adjustment for candidates, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I know I've been a call time manager before, and that is definitely one of the challenges is getting candidates on the phone and off the phone, like fast. And like you're saying, it's really difficult because you want to make a personal connection with that person, but you also need to do that with 50 other people in that same time frame.
Yeah.
So
Right.
like it's definitely a balance, I would say, in having that one-on-one, and also like making sure that you're aware of your time, the person's time, and your staff's time as well.
Yeah, and I think like that's where, I mean, it's important to have those conversations with the people, but that's where, leading them to like the website or the Facebook page so they can learn more about the campaign, and be sure to reach out to ask questions. That's also a really important thing for a candidate to have.
Yeah, most definitely. With that being said, guys, definitely check out Mikhal's website. It's Mikhal Goodman for Pontiac City Council. Pretty proud of a lot of the graphics on there, and all of his issues are on there as well. So it'll give you a little bit deeper idea into what we're talking about today. But so I guess one of the questions that a lot of young candidates are reaching out or asking is like, how do you even go about deciding to run? What's your first step when you make that decision? What was your first step when you finally said, I'm going to run? What did you do next?
So the first decision comes way before your first campaign decision. It's leading up to it of thinking, really you have to ask yourself, when am I qualified to fight for the people? At least that's the question that I ask. Because when you run for office, you're not running for yourself, you're running for the people who you represent. So one, are you capable of doing that? Are you prepared to fight for the issues that the people that rely on you need? Um, are you prepared to be in the public eye much more than you'll probably ever imagine? Are you prepared for the positives and negatives that come along with that? How does it affect the people around you? Especially if you, let's say, have a significant other who is, not in the same field as you, or simply just lives a more private life. These are all questions you have to ask. But then you have to begin to ask, okay, well, I've kind of come to the conclusion that I do want to run. How do I go about this? Figuring out what you're going to run on. Yeah, that's something that should be figured out before you run, not after you announce. If you figure out your policies and your campaign issues after you announce to run, we have a serious problem. Because you should be running to address an issue. You should not be running because you want the office. But after that, it's making sure that you have the team to back you up, making sure that you have the support to actually get across the finish line or know how to build that support. And especially like making sure that you have all your I's and T's dotted and crossed. Because let's be real, you will have people who don't want you to run. So you need to have, your glass house pristine as all hell, really. And just making sure that you are prepared for what it's like to be a public figure where all of your actions have consequences upon everyone else. If you can handle that and you can continue to do what you do with the same vigor, with the same passion for people, then go ahead. That is the first step to everything. After that, your team and kind of everything else falls into place as long as you do the right work and you're in it for the people.
I think that's very solid advice. And I think I like what you said about, don't run just because you want to see it. Run because there's an issue that you're trying to fix.
Yeah. I mean, like, even for me, before I decided to run, I didn't want to. That's the thing. Like, if there was a more qualified person to do this, I wouldn't be here right now. If there were people who I had faith in to do the work, I wouldn't feel the need to run. I'm a 21-year-old who is currently in college, working at a school and on a bunch of different boards. I have a long-term stable relationship. I should be enjoying life as much as possible in my early 20s. But there was a part of me that had to realize things have to be done. And currently I am the best prepared person to do so, especially when the alternative is letting someone who has kind of been to not cause myself any trouble, someone who is wrong on the issues, someone who is racially insensitive and not the ideal person for the district that they represent. And I firmly do believe that I am better to represent the people that currently do live here. And that was what made me make that decision. But if there was someone else who could do it dramatically better than me, I would not be here right now. I would support them. And that's also a key thing, is recognizing that the seat is not about you. It's about the people who rely on you. And once you get to that point and you can fully internalize that, that is when you can become a good representative for the people, a good people's advocate, a good fighter, because you are fighting for something beyond you.
Yeah, definitely. So just to build a little bit up on that, how do you feel, or what do you feel about, like, when two candidates who are basically have the same platform or both progressive or both what the people need run in the same district against each other? Do you feel like that makes a situation better, or do you feel like one should step? Like, it's something I think we all see as a challenge, but how does that make you feel?
With some small inside knowledge to the potential conversation that we're having here without saying names. I mean, it's difficult because if the platforms are the same, it leads you to ask me different questions. Well, why are you more qualified than the other person who's running on the same exact platform as you? What makes you fighting for them different? And sometimes that can be, hey, I've been around longer, I've accomplished more things. But we shouldn't look at experience and accomplishments as the sole decider between, who gets what. Talking about, what is their way about going to enact these solutions to these issues? What is their methodology for how they work and act with constituents? And sometimes it kind of just comes down to personal preference and who you know. I mean, there's a race here in Pontiac where there are two very good people where I'm like, if either of you win, we're in a great situation. So I've personally not taken any, not putting any bets behind any horses, but it's like at a certain point you have to kind of think, well, why are both of you running? Is there something that could be hashed out to make it easier to coalesce around one person? Or if not, if you both feel any need to run, do it. But don't do it in a way to tear down another person unless it's completely warranted. Because, sometimes we're in a situation of like, hey, this person seems to be good, but let's dig beyond the surface a little bit. Oh, there's a whole lot of bad things here that we don't need. Let's not do that. And then it's not about tearing down at that point. It's about educating. It's about making things known. It's about making sure that the voters can make an educated choice, even if it's not for you. Make sure that the people are aware of what is in their best interests and allowing them to make the decision. It's kind of what it all boils down to.
Definitely. So just as a reminder, you're watching WJZZ Cool TV, streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. Like, follow, subscribe, comment, and share. And to sponsor, advertise, email WJZZCoolTVofficial@gmail.com. But so how exactly, when it comes to the campaigning world, I guess we could say, what are you doing? Are you on doors yet? Are you doing events? How did that side of things look for you?
So I've been on doors a decent amount. My race, because I don't have a primary, I get to kind of skate all the way to November. So the time crunch is not really a crunch anymore. It's a bit more spread out. It allows a little bit more calm going into a lot of different things, allowing you to think long term rather than, hey, this needs to be done yesterday, and we're behind on it already. I've been attending a couple of events, haven't really planned any out yet because it's, how can I put it? One of the biggest issues that I see happening oftentimes when it comes to races, nonprofits, organizations, everyone's trying to compete with one another for space. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you just need to be willing to just help and participate. Like, for example, I did a community give back a couple weeks ago in one of the apartment complexes nearby. But there's also an organization called Oakland County Mutual Aid that does community give backs as well. So instead of trying to compete with them for space and resources, I go there and help out. I go there and volunteer my time, give them resources, clothing, masks to distribute to people. And it's being able to recognize that, hey, I could do this thing that's all about me, or I can help the community. And to me, that's a much more important thing to do than to do things solely for yourself. I would much rather sit here and, give all these resources to an organization that's already doing the work amazingly than to do something for myself solely for the fact that I want votes and recognition. But I say that to say, when we get later into the campaign, I do plan on having events, not only for, talking about my campaign and why I'm running, but also make sure that these events are, giving back to the community, especially after really almost a year and a half of COVID, making sure that people have resources and all these things, and to show them that, I'm not here just to run for the seat, but I'm also here to actually fight and give back to the community. So events will be coming, and doors will increase as we get closer to the election.
So just because you spoke just a little bit about COVID, what do you feel was like the biggest challenge starting your campaign during COVID? I mean, this is your first campaign, but you've volunteered at campaigns before. So how did the whole COVID situation change things, and how campaigns are going to start going about things in the future?
Just reevaluating pretty much all of what grassroots politics is, let's be real, because all of it's people-based. Unfortunately, due to COVID, being around people was dangerous. Being able to knock doors it's the key part of being able to organize. Now, okay, well, for a decent amount of time, no one knocked doors because it was too dangerous because we didn't understand how the virus was happening. Um, Now it's like, okay, well, now we've learned some different protocols to make door knocking a lot safer. But also, like, one of the key things for getting people involved and excited is having large events where people can feel the energy. Unfortunately, during COVID, feeling the energy also leads you to maybe feeling sick later on, and that's not a thing that we want. So I guess adjusting what it is to do people-based politics into an age where being around people is a lot more cautionary than it used to be, having to really reevaluate everything that we've done to make it safer in a post-COVID, current COVID world was probably the adjustment.
Yeah, and I feel like the whole COVID situation also highlighted the importance for everybody to have access to internet and to like technology so they can participate in a lot of things.
Definitely. I don't know what the broadband is like in Pontiac, and I'm sure you can tell us, but I know for where I'm from, I was volunteering on a county commissioner race when COVID first hit, and Augusta Township was part of that. And for the first month or two, I think it was, they were taking homework packets out to these kids because they just didn't have internet. They went over almost a month without having like any access to their schooling until like this group could get together homework packets and stuff. So I know broadband was a huge thing that came up for some of my area. And I'm sure that there's probably sections of Pontiac that you experience like dead zones and things. But that connectedness that we suddenly needed became so important.
Yeah, so I guess I can kind of also speak from experience here, not only having been a poor kid and kind of I'm still poor. Let's not pretend that I'm not. I'm still poor. But growing up in Section 8 housing, not really having extra money for things when, in a world where Wi-Fi and internet became extremely important. But I also teach. So watching, seeing what had to happen to get all of our children and students prepared for learning outside of a building was difficult. Because let's be real, internet infrastructure is expensive for people who simply don't have any extra money.
Yeah.
Because when you look at communities like Pontiac, people have to plan out entire months of maneuvering money to survive. So now the fact that, my kid's home and for them to do work in past class, I now need Wi-Fi. What do you do?
Yeah, and I think at one point Wi-Fi was considered the luxury or something that is not needed, but right now everything is.
Yeah, growing up, Wi-Fi was like the extra thing.
Yeah, like, or you might have it on for a few hours, or like you have to dial in, so it was a lot different. But now there is nothing you cannot do without. You're participating in anything, you need the internet.
Right. And then, of course, when it comes to places like Pontiac, because Pontiac has kind of been known as a lower income city, resources are kind of, known to people here. So, I mean, being able to receive low income internet for like $10 a month and things like that have kind of alleviated the issue. But you also run into the issue of what is considered low income by regulation and government standards is not practical in reality.
Yeah.
I make $21,000 a year. I have no problem saying that. By government standards, I am not poor. I am not below the poverty line. But when I spend half of my income every month on rent, and that's just rent alone, not including bills, car insurance in Michigan, which is the highest one of the highest in the nation. It's no longer the highest, surprisingly. Having to afford food, gas, everything else, and also just trying to maintain it, it's not possible. But I'm beyond the point at which the government feels that I deserve help. And there are a lot of people here who run into that same situation where it's like, no, you still need help. However, the government and whatever regulations and whatever corporations decide that they give help to people worse off than you, decided that you are just not poor enough to get help anymore.
Yeah.
And then we run into that situation here with internet.
Yeah, and that once again goes with the fact that the cost of living has gone up so much, and so many things cost so much more, but the minimum wage or what's considered a living wage is still the same thing. So once again, we are live on WJZZ Cool TV, streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. You can like, follow, share, comment, and subscribe. To sponsor or advertise, please email wjzzcooltvofficial@gmail.com. And if you would like to participate in the conversation, you can dial in at 313-355-6018.
Yeah. So I have one more COVID question, I guess, and this is something that when COVID hit, I'm pretty lucky to be decent friends with one of my city council members, Annie Somerville from Ypsilanti, and I know I started reaching out to my city council person like right away and basically going, what resources do you have? What do you do? And I think a lot of cities weren't prepared. I know IPSI expanded their Barrier Busters program, which is something that helps with rent and helps with utility relief, but like cities just weren't prepared. So I know we're coming towards the end of COVID, knock on wood, if I had some wood to knock on. But how would you make sure that Pontiac is prepared for the possible next pandemic, or if we see COVID flare back up again? What is your COVID preparedness plan, or do you have one?
So the thing is, as a city, we need to create one. We need to put the resources in place to make sure that we can at least begin to help our people. So, making sure that we have some money, put away for, food and bills assistance, for rental assistance. Again, if the city had city-run housing, you could very easily stop collecting rent as a city for these properties. Making sure that, if we're operating under the idea that it's, COVID or another pandemic, making sure that we have, some medical resources available, making sure that we're working with local organizations and clinics and hospitals to come up with a plan for the city itself. That way we're not completely overwhelmed like we were with COVID, where our hospitals are full, no one has access to masks, people are, running out of food, there's no more toilet paper, all these things. We have to make sure that we are, as a city, prepared to help out our people. And also making sure that we can help out local businesses, because they do get crippled during pandemics like this, especially when the government fails to do what it needs to do for the people themselves to help maintain a livable lifestyle, and also helping make sure that local businesses who rely on local, money circulation to be able to survive as well. Because if you don't do that, you open the door to, one, people getting sick and dying, people ending up homeless or without resources, and also you end up with local businesses going out of business to then possibly be bought up by developers and larger corporations that have no ties to the community. So we have to, again, become prepared and have the resources set aside to make sure that our community can survive a pandemic, because that's what needs to happen. We need to not only survive a pandemic, but also be able to grow past it and, go back into somewhat normal afterwards, rather than where we are currently, where it's like, we still don't know what we're doing. Let's be completely honest. Yeah. We need to be, as a city, prepared for that.
Hopefully, we'll see you on city council and see some of those plans come through then.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, I have this little goal in my mind to become the ordinance writing candidate. As in, once I get in the city council, I'll probably be the one spending the most amount of time working on actually drafting up city policy.
Yeah, I can see that. Your housing, your cannabis policy. Yep, I can see you being the ordinance person.
Yeah, I mean, plus I love to read and write things and complain. So I mean, it's better to put those. It's better to put that into actual constructive work rather than just talking all day long. So that's the plan.
I like that plan. It sounds like a good one.
Yeah, putting it down on paper and making them part of the city will just help more people down the line.
Yeah. So I'd like to ask you some more just kind of general questions. Like, what is your favorite thing about Pontiac?
Pontiac is one of the most resilient cities I've ever seen in my life. Be it, I'm 21 years old, so the my life part of that's not the best dignifier there, but Pontiac is extremely resilient. Despite us losing so much, losing a lot of our tax base in our economy, losing most of our jobs when GM left, and somehow still being able to survive. That's what we're doing. Pontiac is surviving. The thing is, now we need to find our next steps to grow and thrive again for our city residents. And that's the pivot that I don't believe we've made yet. But, the fact that Pontiac has been able to do what it can to survive for so long in a way that people kind of feel like there's still a strong community here is amazing to me. So that's probably the thing I enjoy most, plus the fact that I was born here. So maybe a little bit biased.
You're allowed to have a bias. That's okay.
Yeah, so to wrap things up, can you give us any parting words of wisdom?
Yeah. Always do the best that you can for the people that rely on you. Whether that be in your personal life, whatever profession you're in, or if you're running for office. Doing what helps the most amount of people will typically never steer you wrong. To do some self-plug here, if you want to, learn more about me or get involved in my campaign, please do go to my website at McHale for Pontiac, MIKALFORPONTIAC.com. You can also find me on Facebook at McHale Goodman for Pontiac City Council District 3. And on social media at McHale for Pontiac. I try to keep it all as similar as possible. There you can learn more about, me, about why I'm running, who I am, my background, as well as learning about the issues that I'm really pushing for in much more detail than I'd probably be able to get into on the show. And of course, if you ever want to get involved or donate to the campaign, all that stuff is on the website as well. So if you ever want to help knock doors or do some other type of volunteer work, make phone calls, help design some things, it's all appreciated. So I think that's all of my information. And also, follow some of my work at the Young Dems on YDM, since I am the vice chair, as well as the Oakland County Democratic Party, because I do run the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. So hopefully you'll see a lot more surrounding those things, as well as my campaign in the coming future.
Awesome. Well, Mikhail, thank you so much for joining us today. I think that we've had a wonderful discussion, really gotten to know you as a candidate. I think we've had some insight into what it means to be a young candidate and what it looks like. And I really appreciate you taking the time to give that perspective and share your story.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. It is a nice way to start off a Saturday.
Most definitely. Well, sorry, you were going to say something.
Oh, I was just going to let you know, if you guys would like to stay up to date on our show, and make sure to follow it at Dive Into Young Politics with Leah and Zahara on Facebook, and then at Young Political Dive on Instagram.
Yeah, please subscribe on our page. We're definitely going to be here next Saturday from 1 to 2 every Saturday. Definitely go like Mikhail's Facebook. I know that likes are gold in campaign world, so go like his page, share his page. Definitely, if you have friends in Pontiac, let them know what's happening there and tell them that, here's a candidate that wants to hear from you and it really is progressing Pontiac forward. It's all about raising up the young voices, guys, and giving us a platform and having our voices heard, breaking down those barriers and making sure that we're making the change that we really want to see. So we will see you guys next Saturday from 1 to 2. Mikhail, again, thank you so much for joining us. I really do appreciate it. Wonderful discussion today.
Thank you so much for being there, Mikhail.
Yeah, maybe in the future you can bring me back on, because I just love to talk.
Well, if you can't tell, the three of us could talk for hours.
Yeah, so we might consider it.
We'll definitely have you back on, Mikhail. Maybe post-election, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully post-victory. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, post-victory. Post-victory. We'll have to have you on for a round of post-victory elections. So.
Yeah, I'd love to be on.
You'll be on the November ballot, correct?
Yeah, so I don't have a primary, so I will be on the ballot in November.
Okay, so look for Mikhail Goodman on your November ballot if you are in Pontiac. And stay tuned for more young candidates, more information coming out of Dive Into Young Politics. We'll see you next Saturday from 1 to 2.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.